Today we're going to talk about what is a computer. A computer is a device that can be programmed to manipulate data or information. A computer is the perfect marriage of hardware and software. Previously we talked about the history of the computer, and so you know there were many different notable figures that were responsible for the advancement of computing technology. However, Charles Babbage is considered to be the father of the computer because he first popularized the idea that there were four essential components that make up any computer. The computer is a perfect marriage of hardware and software. Here you'll see that there are many different electronic physical components that make up a personal computer. And then there is a lot of software that needs to be on that computer to give it the instructions to control the hardware. I like to think of a computer sort of like a piano, where the piano is the physical keys and pedals, but the sheet music is what makes the piano sing, what makes it come to life. The computer is the same way. The physical components without software just sit there in the same way that if someone doesn't play the piano, no sound comes out. All computers, no matter whether it's a smartphone, PC, smart TV, tablet, they have four essential components: input, processing, storage, and output. I've tried to give you little pictures right here so you can see what each component is. Input is information you put into the computer using something like a keyboard or a mouse. Processing is when a computer does the arithmetic and logical calculations using something like a processor. Storage is what you're used to seeing as a hard drive or your USB flash drive. And then output are the fruits of the computer's labor. For example, whenever you see the screen refreshing and updating, that's actually output from a computer. Or if you print out a document, that is output as well. But all modern computers have all four components. I also like to think of the computer using a human analogy. A human has input, like your mouth. It has the ability to process information using that awesome thing we call a brain. It has a way to store things in fat cells or the food you just put in your stomach. And then, of course, it has output, and you can use your own creativity there. Input is how information, instructions get into a computer. It gives the computer everything it needs to know what to process. There are countless input devices: mice, keyboards. Even the screen is an input device, especially for touch-enabled phones and tablets. Every computer needs the ability to process. So the processing function of performing arithmetic and logical calculations normally falls to something called the central processing unit. This is the backside of an Intel CPU, and these are the pins that actually fit into the motherboard and connect to the motherboard circuitry in order to allow you to do the amazing calculations that computers are known for. Storage. Just like you need to be able to remember things, the computer needs to be able to remember things. Sometimes it needs to remember information for a short period of time, and sometimes longer. There are many ways to get instructions or data into a computer, and so we would call those input sources. Once information gets into a computer, however, it can be used a lot of different ways. We can use it temporarily, like when a program is running and it is crunching some data. It would use our random access memory, maybe some parts of the CPU's cache. But if we really care about something and want to keep it longer, we can put it into one of many different permanent storage areas. You're probably familiar with hard drives, with internet, so-called cloud-based storage. You're used to putting files on your USB hard drive. And even on the motherboard of your computer, there will be chips where information is permanently kept so that the computer can start next time power is provided. So we have random access memory. You can think of that as the memory sticks that go into a computer. And this is used temporarily and is only available while the computer is on. This is what programs use when they're running. They use RAM, and this is a temporary form of storage. But if you want to keep something more permanently, including you want it to remain even after the computer has been turned off, then you need to store it on a hard drive, cloud-based storage, and the like. So there are many different types of storage. Let's talk about some of the ways to store your data more permanently. For a long time we had floppy disks and tapes, and that led the way to CD-ROMs, DVDs, and that sort of physical storage media. Then we moved to things like USB flash drives, which many of you guys have. In your classes, you're familiar with cloud-based storage because you use things like Google Drive and Google Docs. You may be familiar with the fact that most computers have some sort of storage attached to them, like this platter-based hard drive. And inside your computer, there's normally a BIOS or ROM chip that keeps the necessary permanent information that's needed to start the computer up once power is restored. Output, there are many different types of output. The number one type is obviously the screen. Most people don't think about that as output, but your computer is constantly refreshing the output, the screen you're looking at, with new frames of visual information. There's printers, all types of things. Desktops are computers that are extensible. This is looking at what's called a motherboard, which is a huge printed circuit board that has all these different slots. There's different types of computers. What makes a desktop computer special, a personal computer, if you will, special, is that it's extensible, which means that I can put different types of components or cards into it. I can upgrade the machine and change it as technology changes. A laptop is a little bit different. It requires the circuitry to be built in a much tighter and smaller area, and so it isn't extensible. The components are what we call integrated. They work together, and so it's very hard to plug and play, to add your own components and upgrade them, because they all are built together as one big piece of integrated circuitry. This is what a motherboard for a laptop looks like. You can see that that's a lot different than the desktop that has all of the different slots. Inside your phone is sort of like taking that laptop concept and going even further. Notice how it's even smaller, and more and more and more of the components are integrated together. There's less and less pieces. So these chips in here all perform more and more integrated functions. Your phone is special in that there are parts of your phone that don't exist in other computers. For example, accelerometers, gyroscopes. Your phone has many more capabilities and different chips that are put into it to provide for things like GPS, accepting mobile phone calls, and that sort of thing. So hopefully you've learned a little bit more about what the computer is. I gave you sort of a look at the difference between what a desktop PC might look like versus a laptop that you're probably using right now versus the cell phone that is, probably in your pocket. So let me know if you have any questions, and make sure you refer back to this presentation, read it, take notes as necessary, look at any videos, click on any links, just like you would with any other presentation.